Thank you, Father. We have a roundtable metaphorically, hopefully also maybe in reality too, even though in the sense that we hope to include discussion among the panelists and among the audience. So we're gonna have 10-minute talks from each panelist. We're gonna go in sequence together and then have discussion afterwards among the panel and then open it up for you all too. So our first speaker is Archpriest David Pratt, who is the Orthodox Christian Chaplaincy Director and Associate Teaching Professor in the Philosophy Department at Georgetown University. And he will be speaking on chastity and the common good, virtues of integrity over sexual solipsism.
Good afternoon, Your Grace, members of the clergy, monastics, brothers, sisters, friends. I'm in an unenviable position. The very excellent papers this morning, and also just in the last hour, along with the very excellent keynote address, have robbed me of much of my thunder. They stole my points. So I'm going to attempt, in what we have now termed, these are the zip file presentations, they're 10 minutes long. I'm going to attempt to at least muster up something of a clap. It's also clear, too, going forward, that my title should be rearranged. I think we have to now speak about the disappearance of chastity. And I'd like to hold that as we go forward. My aim here, of course, is to stimulate discussion. I was not anticipating the previous session, so I'm going to hope that we can gin up something of interest for you. Introduction. Once there was no secular. I quote the opening sentence of John Milbank's Theology and the Social, a work still in discussion 30 years on. In its second edition, Milbank reconfirms his argument, namely that a theological vision alone could challenge the hegemony of neoliberalism, the problematic relationship between the formal openness of liberalism, which is designed to mitigate conflict on one hand, and an arbitrariness of content on the other, a positivism, which always threatens to overwhelm even the peace of mere suspended hostility, which is the best that the civitas terrena can ever manage. I'd like to add to his quote, if I may, and this is in his second edition. He says, and the secular was not latent, waiting to fill more space with the steam of the purely human when the pressure of the sacred was relaxed. The recovery of virtues of purity and integrity necessarily throws us into the weeds of a political theology. Neoliberalism, which now includes, or rather requires and demands, practices inimical to Christianity, such as euthanasia, infanticide, sexual license, the malleability of our sexuality, our bodies, the forgetting of the body. We're forced to engage, I believe, with Milbank if we hope to specify right and wrong conduct in matters for ourselves and for others. Let me state the imperative a little differently. Quote, we have never lived this way before. I'm citing an eminent professor in Belgium, not so well known here, by the name of Lieven Boeve. And this was coming from a keynote address, a very splendid one, I might add, in 2003. And what he was speaking about is that with the coming of the secular, we're actually, as human beings, doing something that's never been done before. We're in new territory, and we don't actually know what we're doing, he said, and that's his argument. We actually don't know what the future is going to be, and this is actually really a dangerous time for believers and non-believers alike. Destructive. His solution is he proposes that Christianity needs to perform a kind of interruption on the secular and reassert itself, maybe not continuously, but at moments to break in and break back into this discussion. And I think that he's also right. However, it's not going so well for us. The statistics that we've already heard quoted tell us that our discussion is being minimalized and their discussion, the secular, is at maximum strength. So until then, we should not be surprised that biblical holiness and continence are going to continue to be misunderstood and unheeded. And why so? Because such norms, such as that the holiness serves to protect, are really unintelligible for young people today, and quite a few older adherents too. And I say this after 12 years of experience in higher education. I currently live and work on a college campus. In fact, one could argue I work in the factory of liberalism. I dress as you see. It's my daily uniform. People are very polite, but I'm going to tell you what I stand for and what you stand for is an uncomfortable bargain, to put it mildly. It's also not so good for us. Recent polls indicate that Christians are really in disbelief of classical teachings on matters of sex. A recent survey of Orthodox Christians in the United States, I repeat, Orthodox Christians in the United States, finds that 60% are in favor of marriage equality, same-sex marriage, or, to put it bluntly, sodomy. The poll suggests that secular practices are acceptable to our people, at least on some levels, and I find this very alarming. Where did I find this statistic? I went to the site for the initiative, it's called, I believe, the Equality Initiative. I was looking around searching, and that was the first thing that came up, and I thought, wow, look at that, I didn't know, 66%. I believe because the secular, before the secular rather, chastity had a reference to the divine and a social order that included recognition of the natural law. Individuals were situated in and through those orders. And now the question is, can we recover that and become post-secular? Part 2, the argument and the lie. I argue that we should see the decline of chastity through the disregard for natural law, sexuality and biology, as we've already heard. That followers of neoliberalism, I'm specifically referencing the Rawlsian tradition, and its enforced agnosticism, and the traditionalist position that accompanies encyclopedic and genealogical versions of ethics, where individuals are guided by positive law on one hand and the lie on the other. This is what we need to look at. And with a jurist on the panel, I'll say nothing more about positive law. The lie is the secular value that says, thou must indulge. And here I'm speaking especially to pastors. Thou must indulge in order to be meaningful, to fit in, to be somebody, to be something. Which comes with the practical commandment, thou must not have an accident. You must not be stupid. The lie features two conflicting norms that are meant to surpass chastity and, as you know, make us happy. Yet severe loneliness and unhappy are the hallmarks of the hookup and divorce cultures that the lie generates. The lie goes unchecked while divorce rates keep climbing, casual sex, what in Belgium is called serial monogamy, is considered normal, and same-sex relationships are legal. The lie of secular sex, and that's what I'd like to call it, it asks young people to throw themselves into a range of sinful and dangerous behaviors. And for what? Frankly, ephemeral pleasures, and only the possibility of a lasting permanent relationship. It's a living roulette wheel, quite frankly. And it's little wonder that biblical sexuality seems incoherent and intelligible the more we accept the lie. It's already been proposed several times in our proceedings, various forms of medicine. And so, not to repeat, I would like to say we can counter the lie. And we can look for it the counter to actually have an effect upon conjugal morality. And since my time is limited, I will come right to the point here. I think the point that we have to face is sexual solipsism. What Descartes did in his meditations as a thought experiment to clarify and crystallize exactly what thought is meant to eliminate any discussion or any consideration of important details. Literally, you had to forget the body. That and other arguments have left us with something that's called substance dualism. And if God wills, and this paper can develop properly, I think the argument is this, that the disappearance of chastity is actually a trait of a kind of substance dualism that has moved from epistemology to morality. We're actually disconnected from our bodies. The meaning of our bodies no longer is known to us. It has a meaning, and I deal with some agnostics. They're willing to accept that it has a meaning. But what meaning it is and how to understand it, that's unknown. And this is also what we're up against. We're up against, I would consider this to be a wicked syllogism. May I give it to you? My hope was to put it on PowerPoint. The vicissitudes of technology. The major proposition, sex equals good, healthy, and normal. Minor, the denial of sex equals bad and deformed. Conclusion, Christian tradition is wrong. There are some material problems in this syllogism. There are also some serious formal problems in the syllogism, and yet it's an extremely popular syllogism. I hear it all the time. It also comes with two corollaries that I'd like to share with you. Number one, sex is what we say it is. Two, sex happens by our authority alone. That's already been confirmed. I will now, for the sake of our discussion, simply suggest two possible routes that Orthodox theology can take against these problems. Number one, and I hope this will be challenging, I think we need to seriously re-engage ourselves with the natural law. Not just Romans 1, but the natural law tradition itself. And I think the question at hand is that going to be old-style natural law? Sometimes known as pre-Vatican II natural law. Jacques Maritain, Gilson, those kind of authors. Or will we dare to get involved with what is now being referred to or called new natural law theory, coming from John Finnis, Robert George, and others? I understand books and articles are coming out. I don't detect any Orthodox voices in any of that discussion. Why do I appeal for natural law? Because of the following. Number one, like the common good, it's an abstract concept, but it appears to us in concrete forms. It's understandable. I say that again, it's understandable. And it can speak to an agnostic audience. I emphasize the understandable, once again, because we're living in the tyranny of feelings. The Orthodox Church, I believe, needs to give to the world, press into the world, its own rational tradition. And I think my time has come to an end. The details on objectification and the making of our problem of solipsism will have to wait for another time, or perhaps for an imminent discussion. Thank you.